think we got the thumbs up.
Hello. Welcome to Central Presbyterian Church. Hopefully this past Sunday you saw our new addition to the church, to our sanctuary. We're very proud of this. With me is Will Nickles. He is here to give you some update on how this was done, how it was made. We started this discussion quite by accident last year. I overheard Mandy telling somebody that for years Dr. Bailey was in favor of us getting a new cross. Well, that's all I heard. From there, I repeated that story to April Swanson, and she took that to Session, and Session approved it. I had no idea that was the plan. But in December of 2019, it was approved for us to replace this cross. Well, sometime early part of 2020, April and Will and I were standing here in the sanctuary talking about some other things, and replacing the cross was mentioned. And we started kind of butting our heads a little bit, and I think at the exact same moment, the lightning bolt hit us that Will Nickles was the person to build the cross. It has been a very interesting journey from that point to now, and I would like for you to get a lesson from Will on how he did it and how it all came to be.
Yeah, I think the reason I was chosen, I was the last one standing. Everybody was bolting for the door. But I was really happy to be able to contribute to this and combine two of my favorite things, and that's theology and woodworking. So this was a really great opportunity for me, and it was an honor and a pleasure to do it. I kind of want to talk a little bit about the design itself and what the Celtic cross means. The form itself that you see is the Latin cross, which is the cross, with the nimbus, or that circle that's added around the cruciform part of the cross. And nobody really knows exactly, or I can't find exactly where the original design came from, but it's most likely came from the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, and it originated, most people think, in the British Isles, Wales or Scotland, Ireland, England, in that area. And that's because of its origin. That's why the Presbyterian Church has had such an affinity for it, because it means so much to that part of the world. And of course, we as Presbyterians come from that part of the world. So the Presbyterians have long had an affinity for this particular shape. As in terms of the actual forms themselves, the Latin cross, which is just the cross itself that we're used to seeing, that's obviously the instrument of crucifixion. And since the Reformation, most Reformed churches have used that empty cross to represent the sacrifice of Jesus. And that's so that we typically see the cross by itself. The reason that it's empty now is because that reminds us that the work of Christ is accomplished, and that Jesus now resides at the right hand of the Father and continues to advocate on our behalf with God. The nimbus, or the circular part that you see at the top there, not really sure where that came from, but like I said, it came probably in the Middle Ages and was added, and some people attribute that to Irish ancestry, so to speak. But to me, in my interpretation of that, the circle is more the endlessness of God's love. It's the infinity, the infinite nature of God. So as we think about the addition of both of those pieces together, you've got the humanity of Christ in the cross, which represents the death and the sacrifice of Jesus. But you also have the divinity of Christ in the circles. Adding those two things together gives us both natures of Christ. And we say that every week in the Apostles' Creed. We talk about Jesus being born, Jesus suffering and dying on the cross as represented by his humanity, but also the divinity of Christ has risen now and represents us in heaven with God the Father. So that's the actual form of the Celtic cross itself. in terms of the way I went about designing the cross, in order to get that humanity of the cross and the humanity of Jesus across to when you're looking at it, I wanted the cross itself to be very plain, very human, very dark, because that was the instrument of execution. So there shouldn't be any ornamentation on the cross itself. So I chose a dark woods walnut, very straight grained. I didn't want any of the figure of the wood to take away from what it symbolized, which was the humanity of Christ. So this is just a straight grain, a rift sawn, for those of you who know woodworking. It's a rift sawn walnut, very straight grained, very dark. In terms of the boards that I actually used itself, some great story about this. Some of this cross actually came from Dick Christopher, the wood, and his property. And so I think it's special to have what's in the church now. They came from Dick Christopher. It's been such a blessing to this church. Other parts of this cross came from a dear friend of mine from about 25 years ago. He gave me some boards, and I had been waiting literally for about 25 years for the perfect project to use these boards, and I could not think of a better way to use these. He was a longtime elder in the Hartsville church, which is where I grew up, and he'd been an elder for 40 or 50 years and gave these boards to me. And I can't imagine a better place for these boards to be used for Kirk than in the cross here at Central. Let's see. Oh yeah, the nimbus itself is curly maple. And curly maple it's a gorgeous wood. And I wanted there to be a real contrast between the dark humanity of the cross and the holiness of the divinity in the nimbus or the halo. And if you come up close to it and you look at that nimbus and you walk around a little bit, the light reflects off of that and it almost looks like it's alive. The figure in that grain just shimmers and it kind of reminds you of the Spirit almost. So it's the idea that bright wood is alive and it's still alive. And so the combination of those two come together. And that shimmer that you get in the maple is called chatoyance, for those of you who care. And that means cat's eye in French. But that shimmer, it gives it that just continual glow and like it's always alive where the light plays off of it. So this has been a great project for me. I've loved every minute of it. And I've appreciated the opportunity the church has given me to participate in this. So that's the story of the cross. And there's one more thing, one more small detail. If you look at the very cross of where the cross arms come together, it goes in the shape of an X. And the Greek word for Christ is Christos. And Christos in Greek begins with the letter chi. And if y'all who have been in Greek societies or whatever, you know that the Greek letter chi is the shape of an X. So the first letter in Christ's name is an X. A lot of times we see our Christmas ornaments, particularly like the Advent tree, some of the ornaments are an X. And that's the first letter in Christ. So I joined the wood in the middle in the shape of a chi so that we always remember that Christ is at the center. So a little detail, but it was a little fun to think about that theologically. So this is a great project for me. I've loved it, and thank y'all for letting me do that.
Well, thank you, Will. We're really proud of this. It's a beautiful piece of work, and we can't wait for the rest of our Central Pres family to have the opportunity to come in and see it firsthand. Thank you so much, and hope you have a good day.
Good.
All right.